Hi, it's Neil here. Before we start today's show, I wanted to let you know that I've teamed up with my friends at HireEct this month. And HireEct is the first chat-based hiring app for startups. And what I love about HireEct is it takes everyone away from the dreaded email inbox and waiting around for responses. Think of it like WhatsApp for recruiting. And the HireEct app brings together recruiters and job seekers so they can directly connect with each other. And this allows recruiters and job seekers to communicate more and receive quick feedback. And the HireEct app also uses advanced technology to efficiently map job seekers and recruiters, all based on their preferences and behaviour. So you can improve your chances of reaching inbox zero, accelerate your hiring process 10 times faster than those traditional ways, all by chatting and interviewing candidates anytime, anywhere, on any device. So I invite you all to download the HireEct app for free from the Apple App Store and Google Play Store. That's HireEct, spelled H-I-R-E-C-T. Give it a try, let me know what you think. But on with today's show.
Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast. I've got a great guest lined up for you today. His name is Alexander Filatov, and he's the co-founder and CEO at Ton Labs, where he oversees the development of Freetom, a community-driven blockchain underpinning an open and free internet. And in his role, he leverages his extensive corporate and VC experience towards fostering meaningful partnerships and communities, all with the goal of building a decentralized WebFree platform. Now, as regular listeners will know on here, I always try and talk about new technology, but in a language that everyone can understand, so we can increase understanding of complex technologies and also increase adoption in the industry. So today we're going to learn more about Freetom, the community-driven blockchain that's cultivating this open and free internet, and also more about Ton Labs, where that fits into everything, the problems that they're solving, and more about the ecosystem. So buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to Moscow, where Alexander is waiting to share his story and much more. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
First of all, again, it's my pleasure. So my first job was in marketing with Procter & Gamble in Russia and then in the European headquarters in Switzerland. And notably, already at that time, I was a small angel investor into technology companies. It was kind of as early as 1999 was my first small investment into an IT company. So I've been always a fan of technology. From there, having graduated with executive MBA, I moved into large corporate business and eventually became CEO of two large industrial corporations, a few billion-dollar corporations. But then again, all through that phase in my career, I've been investing as an angel and also reading and looking at the what I call technology train. And then in October 2015, I decided that this technology train is getting so much speed that I absolutely have to jump on the train now, because otherwise I'm kind of having the risk of missing the train. It will depart from the station. And I did. Went into the Silicon Valley and had a little bit of education here and there. And then started creating a venture fund together with my partners. And then eventually that venture fund activity transformed into a passion over blockchain. And we created a company, Ton Labs, which has been the full-time commitment and passion for the last 3.5 years.
Fantastic. And like you said, you've always been a fan of technology, and that path led you to Ton Labs, and which is described as an independent infrastructure and ecosystem developer for Freetom. So I do try and simplify technology for people listening that might be outside of the tech community and bring everyone together and get everyone on the same page. So for people that are hearing about you for the first time, can you just tell me a little bit more about Freetom, the community-driven blockchain that is ultimately cultivating this open and free internet?
There are kind of a couple of big things about Freetom. Obviously, each project has something unique, so we have a couple of things that are unique. The first one is performance of the blockchain. It's basically the first blockchain that cracked what we call sharding. To be more precise, it's called multi-threading. And to put in simple language, as you said, when load comes to the network. Or in other words, when a lot of people are coming to the network simultaneously to do something, you need scalability of the blockchain to handle all of those transactions or smart contracts. And that's what we've done. We set a world record in August, handling more than 50,000 transactions per second comfortably. And again, to be even more precise, it's not simple transactions, it's smart contract executions. So that's kind of one big thing, which is scalability. And it hasn't really been important until recently. But then you have this phenomenon of NFTs coming on now. And with NFTs, it's a whole new ball game because you have a whole bunch of folks, non-blockchain, non-crypto, coming in, trying to experience this world of NFTs, artists and collectors and museums, and now more recently global brands. We saw Disney launching, we saw Playboy launching their marketplace, and sports federations launching as we talk. So yesterday, I think it was yesterday, Sotheby's created like a metaverse. So NFTs are bringing a whole set of new users, new to the blockchain crypto. And that's where, millions of users might try to interact with the platform simultaneously. And that's where performance is coming in. So that's why I'm mentioning it first. The second thing, which is unique, is our kind of governance model. We are extremely open. We don't have any central company, organization, or foundation running the blockchain. It's very independent and decentralized. It was launched by 23 members initially. Now we have about 30 DAOs who are doing different elements of governance. For example, helping to develop DeFi or NFT or a particular geography, say Japan or China or India or Vietnam. Those are real DAOs that we have, regional DAOs. So it's getting more and more decentralized. And then everything that we do is through contests. So we don't do grants because we think grants is a centralized way of decision making. For example, somebody might decide that, Nail gets a grant and Alexander doesn't, and like why? Because then you lose motivation, you don't have competition. When you do contests, it means that there is competition, there are different ideas, you really crowdsource kind of the power of that community out there. And then anybody can come up with a contest, they can publish it on the forum. And if there is a critical mass of support, that contests get published, financed with tokens, and then deployed. And then we have a few solutions. For example, we have 6 NFT marketplaces coming of the NFT marketplace contest. We had a few DEXs, decentralized exchanges coming of the DEX contests. When we do contests like Soundtrack for Freetom, we have like hundreds of submissions. So that's pretty cool. It means there is something like any member in the community can find a way to contribute to the network, not just being a developer. And then maybe the last piece I would mention as part of that governance is we are probably the only noticeably large network since Bitcoin that has not done any sort of token sale. Not at all. No primary tokens were ever sold. They're given for free in exchange for contribution to the ecosystem. And what's unique about that is, first of all, you don't take regulatory risk, because when you don't sell anything, you cannot be called a security, which is becoming very important, I think, as regulators are getting tougher and tougher on the industry around the world. And then the second thing you don't have what I call speculative intent in the network, because there are no investors, there is no sales, there is no circulation of tokens at the beginning. The only way you can get hold of tokens is you have to earn them with your contribution to the ecosystem. And that brings a slightly different crowd. A crowd that is more passionate, less speculative, and wants to contribute to building something serious and fundamental. So that's maybe a little bit biased towards me obviously being in love with the network, but that's the true passion that the key community members have about the project.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And by removing the token aspect of it, you do end up with that community-driven blockchain where people are in it for the right reasons. And that's Freetom. But what about Ton Labs? Where does that fit into everything? And what problems did you set out to solve with that?
Sure. That's actually a great question, because the way Ton Labs, the mission behind creating the Ton Labs was to contribute first, well, I hope I'm not overselling. I'm not overselling, so I'll try to be careful with words. To develop a really comprehensive operating system on top of the blockchain. And to make it simple for the listeners, you can think of blockchain as a decentralized microprocessor. So let's say decentralized Intel chip to make it easy. And then on top of that, you need the Microsoft or Linux operating system or whatever. Linux probably is a better word because we're obviously also open source. So we ventured to build the first Linux kind open sourced operating system on top of the blockchain itself, on the Freetom blockchain, and that's what we did. It's a pretty comprehensive piece of software. It's finalized. It's fully integrated with the network itself, and it helps to solve two real-life things. One is to make development with our blockchain easier for developer entrepreneurs as well as enterprises. You have, software development, kits, integrated development environment. You have different bindings to popular open source tools, etc., etc. So that's for developers and enterprises. And then the last but not least is users, actually the most important part. To make front ends, browsers, wallets, or whatever is the front end, really simple to use. As simple as they got used with the what we call Web 2.0, with Internet of today, with different applications. So to have decentralized applications as easy and intuitive to interact with as the current applications. And that's what we've done. It's fully deployed, and we're seeing some traction behind it, both from the developer and enterprise, as well as from the user side, who are giving good feedback on user experience.
And just to bring to life everything that we're talking about here, do you have a use case that you could possibly share that will bring it to life and enable anyone listening just to grasp how that whole ecosystem would work?
Sure. We have quite a few. Let me pick something that is like easy to grasp.
Sure.
Well, let's pick NFTs, for example. We have two ones. We have one which is because NFTs are getting like popular momentum amongst non-crypto, non-blockchain folks. So that's why I'm using those examples. So one is, let's talk about tickets. One of the ticketing industry. One of the use cases coming out is tickets, programmable tickets as NFT. And the beauty of that is you can solve quite a few issues and again, come up with a lot of opportunities. For example, you can program resale of tickets. Sometimes it's very important. When there is a soccer World Cup, FIFA is always trying to have people not reselling their tickets, but they cannot because it's a paper ticket. So with the blockchain-based tickets, of course, you can block or you can put some conditions on your sellability. With tickets, you can turn on gamification. So when you buy NFT-like tickets, it's a ticket, and it can be an NFT as a surprise. Like, I don't know, some sort of visualized logo of a player, of a musician, or whatever. You can really be creative with that. So you're no longer buying a ticket, you're buying ticket plus some value attached to it. So that can be pretty cool. So that's one example, and it's coming live very soon, certainly this year into mass adoption. Another one, which is one of my favorite one, is it's a case which is disruption of wine collection. I know if you like wines, Neil. I'm a big fan of good Burgundy sometimes. So the way wine collecting looks today is you buy a nice bottle of Burgundy somewhere in France. You have it shipped to you, very expensive because it's fragile. You have to put insurance on top of that. When you put it into your wine cellar, and then if you want to show it to somebody, you have to invite guests to your wine cellar and physically show it to them. The way we all believe wine collection is going to look tomorrow is you actually don't buy the bottle, you buy NFT of that physical bottle. It remains in the wine cellar of the original manufacturer until you claim it. So that NFT wine goes into your wallet right on top of your phone, and that's where your whole collection is. And you can show it to the whole world. What's your wine collection? And then if you want to sell it, you sell NFT, you don't move the bottle. You save a whole bunch of logistics, transportation costs, insurance, contribute to the nature as well, less pollution to the nature. And then only if you want to drink it or touch it with your hands, you have that wine shipped to you. And it can be 1, 2, 5, 10 years later, maybe even never. It would just keep, sitting there. and everybody would enjoy, interacting with the NFT itself. It's kind of a simple thing, but that gives you a sense of how blockchain can positively influence some very traditional and very old industries.
And before you came on the podcast today, I was doing a little bit of research on you guys, and I learned that last year Freetom ran a contest that gained the network over 400 validator, and the contest was dubbed the Crystal Game. But for anyone that missed that, can you tell the listeners a little bit more about that and how you beat your own record this year too?
Sure, yeah, there were two big validator contests that you were mentioning. The first one was indeed last year, about a year ago in August, and the idea was to achieve true decentralization. And typically the way validators are added to the network is I'm a validator, I know Neil who is a validator, you know somebody else who is a validator somewhere else. And it keeps being a little bit of word of mouth invitation system, which is not what we call merit based. So what we decided to do is we announced the global contests for anybody who has or can rent sufficient hardware and has sufficient skills to compete openly and publicly on performance to become a validator. And we had, I think at some point, almost 500 validators competing, and almost 400, just under 400, eventually making it through the threshold of performance and becoming a validator. And that's, again, nobody has even an idea who they are, because it's open for the whole world. There was KYC done by the Swiss firm to make sure there are no people from restricted geographies like North Korea or something like that. But that's it. That's as far as it goes. Those folks are enjoying, and it's very decentralized. When I look at the map of those validators, they come everywhere from Korea and Australia and all the way to Canada and Latin America. So and everything in between. So it's extremely validated. And that's what the first one. That was the first one a year ago when we got 400 validators, and later that year announced what we call sufficient decentralization. And the second one this year was pretty cool. We developed the second implementation of the blockchain on the Rust language. By we, I mean Ton Labs. The first implementation was on C++ language. And the idea is have two different versions of the blockchain, of the node, so that there is just more stability in the network and debugging comes faster and it's more robust. And that second implementation is faster. So what we decided to do is to announce a contest that we call Rust Cup. And it was pretty cool. It was like really Formula One inspired, visuals there. And the idea was that everybody competes on performance, and then all validators together at the end compete for breaking the world record. And they eventually did at the end of August. As I mentioned earlier on the call, on open internet, not in one data center, that's very important, on open internet, with 200 roughly validators around the world again, a comfortable 50,000 plus transactions per second performance was achieved. At peak, it was 64,000. And that's not actually transaction, that's smart contract executions on parallel, which is very important. For example, if we talk about NFTs or other smart contracts having business logic in there. And the reason it's significant that I mentioned is performance starts mattering now as more and more folks and companies and users get into the space, and there's more pressure on the load on the network. And also it's scalable. By adding another 200 validators, we can go 100,000 plus, etc., etc. It's linearly scalable. So essentially we can build a proper decentralized backend to handle significantly increased load on the networks that comes now with this whole NFT phenomena, and some other use cases, not just NFTs, also checking up. I mentioned the ticketing one, and there are more in the pipeline. I think eventually, our identity will be blockchain based. I think a lot of voting in democratic countries will be blockchain based. Medical records, etc., etc. I guess we all know all of those use cases that are quietly, gradually making it into the space. So that's why that Rust Cup and that world record is important. And as a result, we published a new white paper explaining what the tech is, what the philosophy is, what the governance is, and why we think it's significant.
And just listening to you here, one thing that really stands out is the the importance of community in everything that you're doing, not just the technology. So, is there anything you can share on the size of your community and also what you're doing to increase adoption and keep growing?
Sure, those are very important questions. So on the numbers, we have over 400,000 accounts. There are some duplicate ones, so not all of that is users. So my take is that maybe 150,000 people roughly. And we're 1 year old, right? So we're pretty fresh into the game, not like Ethereum. So about 150,000 users that are using wallets and browsers and some games and some educational resources on the blockchain, et cetera, And I would say probably the core of the community, which is actively contributing to the network, is somewhere between 20 and 25,000 people. That's what we see in Discord and Telegram chats of active community. As I mentioned, the very core is in 30 DAOs, actually governing the network. But that number, 20, 25,000, is an active community contributing through contests, through communications, spreading the news, and the other ways. And that's obviously been fueled by the use cases coming in. We have about 35 use cases which are currently in integration and have already finalized something. I could give you some examples, or in the process of finalized integration, like the 2 use cases that I mentioned. So there is obviously much more in the pipeline globally. There are also some big ones that we'll announce soon, but that one I cannot mention. I'm under a relatively strict NDA. So, but some of the news will be as early as next week on some bigger use cases coming in that should fuel adoption. So that's answering your second question on how we drive adoption is through essentially through the use cases, as well as obviously popularizing our philosophy, open governance philosophy,
I think
on all available social media.
I'll say, I think it's such a hard balance for you guys, because on one hand, you've got a community that are desperate for updates and wanting to hear news on a regular basis. But on the other side, you've got great news, but you're locked down to NDAs and can't share it. It's quite a tough balance sometimes, isn't it?
Sure. Well, that's different. That's one is community-inspired projects that come on the forum, and another one is more enterprise use cases. Yeah. So when you have more like enterprise use cases, of course, you have some corporate rules, you have NDAs in place. So those are 2 different things. Both are important. You need adoption of real user adoption, and you need some institutional adoption, which fuels later user adoption.
Well, what I wanted to try and do on today's podcast is make it a lot easier for new people to learn about what you're doing and help you increase adoption and increase understanding of everything that you're doing at Freetom and Freetom Labs. But if we do have a loyal member of your community that's been listening patiently, hoping for an update or a teaser, what can they expect in 2022? Is there anything you can share about your focus over the next 12 to 18 months?
Sure. The last year, we call it foundational year, where we put a foundation in terms of technology in there, and we're pretty proud to talk about our technology now. And then I would say we fully validated that hypothesis of open governance, contests, no grants, having done no token sale, but still token, enjoying some liquidity and some trading and some value right now, and it grows. So next year which started basically now, back in September, October, we call the year of growth. The most important metric, of course, is real life adoption, real life use cases. And I would not be surprised if we get, 3, 4, 5 relatively large use cases in the network. I certainly see a couple in the pipeline already. We have a few NFT marketplaces taking off, for example, as we talk. We have a few DEXs that are taking up as we talk. And then a whole bunch of smaller use cases, which will bring real people and real life adoption. So that's kind of one big thing, is to grow adoption, grow real life usage. The second the second important priority is interoperability with the other blockchains. We currently have already 7 bridges with the other blockchains. We have obviously Ethereum, that was first. We have 4 EVM compatible blockchains like Phantom, etc., BSC, etc. We have Polkadot bridge coming soon. We have a bridge with Chinese BSM blockchain, etc., etc. There are many more in the pipeline, because I do believe in the idea of not every blockchain being its own world, very closed. But this whole space is being very open, like internet. Internet is very open. You have corporations, you have different protocols, but everything is interoperable. So we're doing everything to contribute to that space being the same. So that's number two. I'm obviously hoping that now that there are enough tokens on the market, that there'll be more liquidity in the network. That's important, not for speculations, which I'm not a big fan of course, as you heard, but it's important to be able to do bigger partnerships, where the token itself is part of the loyalty program or gamification program, and it has value. It has value and it's liquid in the market. So that's, I would say, a third priority. And then just, growing on decentralization, growing on more DAOs into the space, opening up new geographies and new communities around the world. So talking big priorities, those four would be on top of the list.
Love that. And we began today's conversation talking about your origin story, how you got here. And now I always like to finish the podcast by talking about what was the soundtrack to your origin story, your career in tech. Is there a song, a story that you can share about how a piece of music has inspired you or keeps your head in the zone? And we'll add that song to the Spotify playlist. Is there anything that springs to mind?
Of course. I have this all-time favorite song of mine since 1993. When I first was struck by that song. It's not too original. I think a lot of people could say that, but with me, it's extremely genuine. It's My Way from Frank Sinatra. And it's interesting that you ask that, because there have been a few times, like, for example, weddings of friends or some sort of celebration of something, jubilee of friends' companies, where I was singing the song kind of karaoke style. Yeah. And changing my way for our way. So the same lyrics, but changing my way to our way. Because obviously, if I sing my way at somebody's kind of jubilee, that's pretty selfish. So I was it just struck my mind that if our community would ask me, hopefully not, because I'm not the best singer out there by far, but if they ask me to sing at the second year anniversary, the first year anniversary was on May 7th this year, I would also change the words to our way, because that's the way we do things in our communities. So wow. I'll mark that in my head, that I'll hint somebody in the community to trigger me singing that at the second years old celebration of Freetom, and it'll be our way.
Wow, I absolutely love that. Not just the song, but the reason behind it. And I can almost hear Reddit communities now joining together, having that big Zoom meeting, man, with all the different pictures on there and everybody singing our way. So I absolutely love that. And for anyone listening that wants to find out more information about Ton Labs, about Freetom, etc., what's the best starting point and the best way to join your community as well?
Sure. Freetom.org is the community website, which has it's actually a catalog of resources. It has a whole bunch of links on there. Forum.freetom.org is the forum where anybody can come and say whatever they want and publish contest proposal as well, or criticize something. We have a lot of critiques as well in the network. And then tonlabs.io is the website of the core developer Ton Labs, which is proudly supporting this project as a core developer.
Love that. And I love everything that you stand for here. We've had a great conversation today. I think we've succeeded in making it easy for anyone to understand exactly everything that you're doing there and the power of your technology and that community right at the heart of everything that you do. I think that's what really shines about you guys too. But I know you've got a plane to catch. So I'm going to thank you so much for taking the time to sit down and share your story with me before you dash out that door. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Neil. It's been my pleasure. Great questions.
So we covered a lot of ground in a short amount of time there. I hope you all check out Freetom and Ton Labs. Watch some of the videos, maybe even join some of the communities there. I know community is right at the heart of everything that they do. So if we've given you a little taste today, if we've given you a little taster today, you want to find out more, please check it out and let me know your thoughts. But that's it for today. So remember, you can always email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com, Twitter @NeilCHughes, and my website is techblogwriter.co.uk. Keep your questions and pictures to come on the show and everything in between. Keep them coming over. And I'll be back bright and early tomorrow in your podcast feed with another episode. So thank you for listening. And until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.